Okay, so thanks for checking out my channel. A little while back, I posted a video, little preview for a little topic which I was going to be covering. But I thought actually, first of all, I think it's crucial to actually let you know who I am and why it is I want to create such a channel against child abuse. So I've had my own situations going on for the last 5 years now, and I'm going to take you right to the start of this situation which I've been in. So yeah, 5 years ago, my ex-partner she broke up with me, and of course we have kids, which we both actually agreed on having. Although she was very forceful and pretty much said at the start she would leave me if I didn't have kids. But anyways, I manned up at the time, and I've become a very good father. I would always include my children, doing things on activities, that type of thing. In fact, my son was a little sidekick of mine back then. He would pretty much go wherever I wanted, although his sister would often refuse to go out with me. So, anyway, life in general was pretty good. We had a house, and people liked me, and people liked the family, including social services, who always said to us that what a warm, loving family we had. So, how do you go from that into being deemed as some sort of child abuser and woman or wife beater within what, 4 years, 5 years? So, I'm going to go right back to the start, like I was saying. And yes, we had a very nice relationship, two kids, and life was pretty average. So, around 2018, mid 2018, my ex kindly decided to break up with me over the next to nothing. Now, just prior to this, she was saying to me that I've gave her a STD, I've done that, I've done this. And on reflection of those times now and what I've learned about this individual since, it's nothing more than gaslighting techniques. She had me in a hospital at some point, claiming that I was very suicidal, and she was even doing stuff behind my back without my knowledge. She was talking to doctors, that type of thing, and she even mentioned about me abusing her, which at the time when she told this to me, I was a little bit shocked and I questioned her, and she couldn't really say much. So if we roll on then to when she actually broke up with me, she broke up with me literally for the next of nothing. And for the next couple of months, I was still living with her, and I was simultaneously trying to find a place of my own. I was also trying to look for girlfriends, that type of thing, just to move on. Little did I know, actually, in the background of me talking to a couple of women I was meeting up with off dating sites, she was in the background actually talking to them and saying things about me, which wasn't true. So, what she was actually trying to do from this early stage was just get me out of Bristol. Let me just put a bit of context to this to you so you can understand. My mum and dad, they moved to North Yorkshire a few months prior to her dumping me, breaking up with me, whatever you like to call it. And that was her golden opportunity to get rid of me. She was very aware of this. Now, she was very aware that I had nowhere else to go. So off I went. The family court got involved. And let me just remind you, when she got the family court involved, let's just say child abuse wasn't marked, it wasn't even talked about, full stop. It was literally just me doing a couple of petty little things. And I've already admitted to the court, but I rubbed a little bit of bit of mud in her face. You see, when I was living with her for that last couple of months, she would do her very, very best to wind me up. And again, on retrospective, she was doing that to leave bread trails to gain as much evidence as she could on me for what was to come later. So she would wind me up to the max and she would say this to me and she'll say that. Again, we're still on the premises of gaslighting here. She's trying to get it in my mind that I'm this, I'm that. And of course, at the time, being in a very vulnerable state because this is what this person is like. She attacks those mentally who's a little bit vulnerable and those who's a lot younger. She was doing this and that to me, and that was that. So, come December 2018, Family Court literally, quite literally, kicked me out of my home for the next to nothing, quite literally. I had nowhere else to go. So, let's just go back a touch. My mum and dad moved to North Yorkshire. She knew where I was going. Now, like I say, on the first time round in the family court, I had no idea what was to come and I accepted it, knowing that I would see my kids again. And let me just remind you, this individual always said to me and my family, she would never do anything like this should we break up. And this is what happened. So I moved up to North Yorkshire. Both of my children was very upset at the time, including myself. And then a couple of months into the year 2019, I went back to Bristol for another hearing. At the time, I didn't have representation. I didn't know what all this was about, but I decided to walk out of family court because I'm not being sexist. There were several different women, and there was also a female solicitor at that point as well as her. And all I wanted to do was just regularly see my children. At that point, there was nothing else to it. So I came back to North Yorkshire, and during that time, I was just getting on with life. And then I met up with what's now my fiance, and she encouraged me to take her back to family court. There was no communication whatsoever at this point. So went back to family court with her, and it was just block after block after block. And in the background of this, you've also got this individual who's attempting to block all information that I'm legally entitled to, from my kids' GPs to their school, everything that a parent would need to know, all the crucial information that she was not giving me at all. So, little later on into those court hearings, after a multitude of different allegations, which, well, range from foot fungus to me being Adolf Hitler, and I'm not joking you, some of these allegations which radically came out. I mean, honest to God, I've lost count how many times I've been accused of this and that. Now, funny enough, talking about accusations, which I'm still a victim of today, is odd. This person has never provided a scrap of evidence, not a single scrap of evidence. Now, during this process, when I next take her to court, and remember, I opened up family court a second time around, CAFCASS gets involved. Now, if you're not familiar with CAFCASS, but you're familiar with social services, then to me, they both work in hand. They're both extremely poorly rated on social media. Nobody particularly likes CAFCASS. They're known to make bodge jobs of things. They're known to lie. They're known to be biased. They're known to be sexist. Let me just say, layman's terms, they're the most corrupt organization you would ever wish you would never meet or even have any contact with. CAFCASS are by far the most appalling example of child welfare and looking after our children in this country. So CAFCASS gets involved and they actually interview me over the phone. And I was pretty frank with the woman. I just want to see my kids. CAFCASS gets involved. They interview me. And a little later, they interview my children as well. Now, at the time, my children say the most horrendous and shocking things about me. And again, let me just put this into the back of your minds. What my children say about me was never evidenced by their local GP or their doctors. It never went to social services because, like I said at the start of this video, social services deemed us as a warm, healthy, loving family at the time. So you got all these accusations from me strangling my daughter, from pulling her hair to grabbing her by the wrist, and you name it, I was accused of it. My son then goes on to say this and that about me. I'm not going to go into details, but I've got all this documented. Now, the likelihood is that this individual who calls herself a mother was likely influencing them. And I say that because of the seriousness and the most random grown up words they're using in this. Now, let me remind you that my daughter would have been around 4.5 at the time when she was saying this about me. Now, the odd thing is about the CAFCASS report is that there was no times, no dates, no years mentioned. And that's what I mean by saying that CAFCASS are a very, very shabby organization. Let's just face it, if this was going to criminal court, then those type of things would be asked. But we're talking about family court. We're talking about a court which doesn't pay attention and doesn't want to pay attention to crucial details like that. So meanwhile, during this CAFCASS report comes through, I break down and I'm just a mess. I just couldn't believe what I was reading. And at that point, I realised what the mother was doing. Little did I know the horrors to come. She would also then go on to accuse my fiance of doing things, including actually going to her home, which never happened, to the point where she even got the police involved. And I pretty much had my partner arrested and questioned, in which case the police dropped it because of the absurdness of the story, which she was accused of by my ex partner. My mum and dad have also been victim to her in family court, where it's been lie after lie, including my parents grabbing one of my parents grabbing my daughter. So at that point, I actually said to the family court, I mean, come on, this is absurd. My mum's disabled. She's on this and that. Uh, Physically, it's not possible for my mum to do what's been accused of her, given what she was on at the time and given the frailness of my mum at that point. It's just insane. So yes, Kafkas gets involved and are over. And like I say, trust me, if you've not been through that yet, Kafkas will lie. And they will lie in great detail as well to get themselves out of a mess as well. And it's a shame because such a organization should really pay attention to serious mental abuse problems. And that's where child abuse comes in. This is where people gets it wrong. Child abuse, like a lot of people assume, it's not just about hitting your kids and physical abuse. It's about mental abuse. And we all know in the real world that mental abuse does far worse damage than physical abuse will ever do. It scars you and you'll never heal from most mental abuse. So eventually, social services did get involved again. And this was pretty much because people who knew what was going on, including school, including myself, including my ex partner's own family, were reporting her to social services for mental abuse and really neglectful behavior. So social services get involved, and I will praise the individual who wrote the initial assessment and therefore put her on a child protection plan. Child protection plan is pretty much designed for social services to monitor bad parents, and that's what she was put on. Unfortunately, social services do what they do best, and they utterly messed up the case. Now, just like everything else I say, I've always had evidence and I won't lie about things. I'm pretty much straight to the point. If I've got evidence to support such things, I'm going to present that evidence. Social services pretty much deemed me as an asshole right from the get go, or whatever they deemed me. But the point is that I wasn't treated equally. I certainly wasn't treated with respect I deserved as a parent. I didn't get treated as a parent at all. In fact, I barely heard anything from social services. And that's pretty much the case throughout this entire ordeal, is that I'm often, or at least 99% of the time, forgotten about, that I don't exist. I'm not a parent at all. And that includes my son's current school, to the point where I'm making major complaints and also still to date major concerns over poor lack of attendance for both my children. So eventually, social services closed it down after no findings, even though we presented social services with X amounts of evidence to say what this woman was doing, and also identified by the initial assessment which somebody put together for this child protection plan to be put in place. So that was it. Let me just remind you, during this child protection plan, my ex partner was actually complying with court orders. She was making herself look wonderful for social services because she realized at this point what sort of jeopardy she was in. So she was really playing up the social services. She was pretty much complying with everything they asked of her, and that's what I mean by playing up. It got to the point where she was forced into a corner where I actually met my son twice. Now, funny enough, once she's played up the social services and are out the picture, we're back to square one. No court orders are being followed as to date, and they haven't been for the last year. Court orders, what she's got says you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this, you got to do that. She doesn't follow court orders, but still to date, she's in the background actually criticizing me, making up new allegations about me, making new allegations about my own parents, making allegations about my partner, and pretty much everyone I'm associated with, including friends I've known for years, are pretty much all deemed by this individual as abusive people. Now, if I am really guilty of doing this stuff, I wouldn't be on YouTube making a video about this like I have done in the past. But she actually had that stuff taken down through family court because it was given away too much. Let me just remind you, this is an individual who wants me utterly silenced to an extent where she actually had a gagging order on me at one point. And let me just remind you, this individual is so sickening that she actually asked family court for me to remove pictures on my social media of my children. Isn't that awful? So she pretty much shut me down during family court process. Meanwhile, fact, she's in the background using her own social media and she's telling people outside of family court that, see, he's not a loving dad. He doesn't even post pictures about him. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. What she isn't telling people at this point is that she's actually asking for this to happen. Now, this is insane. And I'm not sure who's more insane for asking this or for the judge in the family court to be agreeing with this. I think it's wrong. It's sickening. And I'm not the only one to suffer this type of thing. So mentally, it's damaged me and it's gave me no trust in the system. Now, anyone who's never dealt with social services or CAFCAS or family court or solicitors, you would assume that those people, all of those people as a collective, would understand and put things together to analyze and to evaluate the situation. You would think they would put this together as a collective in thorough detail and actually see what I say is happening is actually true. And like I say, the social services assessor actually did this to begin with. So all I can say for the whole lot of this is it's an absolutely appalling system. And children are not treated equally, they're not treated fairly, they're given no voice, and it truly is a shocking system. So one time I talked to my daughter, and that was the last time I probably spoke to my daughter, and it went so well, like really well. And I actually bought a phone which I'm still paying for to date, as agreed by family court. If I buy a phone and send it to the kids, they can call me every week, which they never have, not really. So I called my daughter once and she got on really well with me. I've not spoken to her for about 2.5, 3 years at that point. It went so well that the mother hung up the call. And then about 5 minutes later, she's on social media saying what awful person I am and that I don't bother with my children. And you've got to think to yourself at this point, this woman is absolutely tapped and very warped. I'm not going to share the image which she actually posted on social media at the time, but I will say sickening and beyond comprehension why someone would do that after having such a positive discussion with their daughter. It's beyond me and utterly appalled by it, just sickening. So every now and again, me and my son will on and off have conversations. I'll call him, or in the past, he's called me. Things go really well for a week. Things are looking up, things are looking really good. And then the next time I talk to my son, probably less than 24 hours later, he's then in a rage with me. I'll question this. Why are you in a rage? I've not spoken to you for 23 hours. You was fine with me yesterday. What's happened in between this? Now, it turns out when we get to the truth of things with my son, and he's getting older now, he's always a teenager, when we start looking at things logically and I start making sense out of it because of his confusion, he comes back to me in a bad mood. Now, I'm not going to say anything of what's going on in the background because I'm not really one to accuse people of things. But don't you find that a little bit strange how for a good week we get on really well and then he's off to being hateful towards me? So I'm going to just leave your imaginations for that because to me, I personally deep under know what's going on. It's what's going on all along. It's hateful chat, which pretty much is hate speech, and that's a crucial part of parental alienation. It's about demeaning the other parent to an extent where they're seen as some sort of devil or something. So this is absolutely no criticism whatsoever to my children, and I'll never hold anything against them. After all, the person dragging them up currently is the person responsible for their mannerisms and everything else, how they speak. My children, the language they use, and I'm talking from 5, 6 years old, they've been using the C word, they've been using the F word, and like I said earlier on, this is evidenced on YouTube videos, which might have accidentally been uploaded. Now, at this point, this individual, this mother, whatever she claims she is, told family court and told other professionals that is because of me, myself, doing this. So let's roll on just a few years. My son now says to me, he doesn't even have a knowledge of this about me swearing, not really, but it's more about his mum don't mind him swearing. So, like most things, when you get to the bottom of it, they're miraculously forgotten about. And I'm not talking about minor little swear words. Like I'm saying, we're talking about 5, 6 year old children using profanities such as the C word, the F word, and various other things that children of that age shouldn't be saying. Now, the mother justifies this by saying she's letting those children express themselves. But you need to understand that it seems that children have actually been banned, barred, going to my children's house because of the language and the general awful atmosphere that goes on in this house. Before I get into mentioning my fiance, let me just also remind you that my daughter is actually on a YouTube video that she might have accidentally uploaded by mistake. But this is actually uploaded before I actually introduce my children to what become my fiance. And she's been very hateful towards her. She's called her derogatory names. And she's also even coming out with more accusations for the world to hear, which even Kafka's social services or even family court has never heard. Other things which has happened, which seems to be erased from my son's mind, is that he actually had a really good rapport with my fiance, to the point that through social services involvement during that time when my ex-partner was put on that child protection plan, it was going to be arranged for me and my partner to come back from Yorkshire to take my son go-karting. Now, I'm going to say my son because at this point, my ex-partner has terrified my daughter so much, she wants zero contact to me whatsoever. And that's such an appalling thing that a mother can actually do that to someone, to a daughter, out of all people. Just utterly awful how someone can poison a young person's mind so much that they're truly terrified. So a week later, just like conversations we have, he gets really hateful towards my fiance. So hateful towards my fiance. Now, my fiance has been nothing good to my children to the point where she sent them money, she sent them gifts for Christmas. My children have never met my fiance. So, in reality, my children shouldn't have an issue with her whatsoever. And any decent mother looking after the children should be actually praising that dad's got a new partner, he's got a fiance, they're going to get married. Unfortunately for us, this isn't the case. Just like myself and my mum and dad, and even my friends around, we're all deemed as very abusive people, which is really odd. And I'm going to leave your imaginations with that one. And we're also going to mention then that my mum and dad also backed my ex into a corner at some point, about 6 or 7 months ago. She was put in a position where she couldn't say no for my son and my daughter to go do something with my parents. Actually, it was outside of their house because my ex wouldn't let my mum and dad take them. After all, my mum and dad's so dangerous. Surely they should be in prison just like me. So a week later, my mum and dad take my children out again, this time to an arcade. And my mum and dad recognise something isn't right. There's an odd atmosphere, and just like me, like I was just saying, you can talk to the kids for around a week, and then slowly, in the background, poison will be dripped into their little minds without them realising, really, which is a tragic thing about it. Now, my interpretation of all this is that this individual, this sickening, twisted, perverse individual will do this gradually. She won't implicitly tell the children directly, your dad's awful, your grandparents are awful. My theory is that she's actually doing this in the background. Say she's on the phone talking to somebody. She's letting the children listen to this like it's real, like it's a real thing happening. Now, the most appalling thing is today is that my relationship with my son, and I won't say daughter because, like I was just saying, she's been utterly poisoned against me. My son was happy for me to go to Bristol a little while back for his 13th birthday. She's got involved. I don't know how she does it. Like I said, I've only got theory on how she does this sort of thing. And he no longer wants to. Now, around a year and a half back, one of my ex's family members actually contacted me in order to pretty much apologize to me for what she's done and how she's treated me in the past. After all, family members are going to stick up for family members. Over time, this family member of hers is actually seeing for herself what type of person this woman is, what she's turned into. And let's just remember, I was with her for 14, 15 years. She's very convincing and she's very malicious. So she come to me and she was pretty much telling me that she has pretty much broke friendships or cut ties with family because of the damage what she's doing to my children. So something else very shocking to find out, just going back to family court, that during family court, when I reopened it, she actually had my children go to some sort of mental abuse, domestic abuse place in Bristol or just outside Bristol. And to learn about this was even more shocking than probably the Kafkas report, what my children had said about me. When I investigated this, it turns out that this place for domestically abused children pretty much dropped it because there was no signs of damage or abuse. But my ex-partner actually set this up during that court time in order to give herself a bit of backbone, to give a bit of substantial news to tell the judge about my children are so damaged by me that I've had to take them to this place to get them looked at properly. Now, my question today is why it took this 2 years to happen, and out of all times to happen, why was it smack in the bang of family court? While she's telling the court many things that the children are unaware of. And it's for those reasons what goes on in family court. I urge any parent being a victim of what I've been a victim of, what I'm still currently a victim of, is hold all your evidence. And of course, you're going to have paperwork, boxes of paperwork. You see, the beautiful thing is today is that I've got a lot to fire back at and to prove my innocence, like I do a lot actually. So when it comes push to the shove, and I'm actually trying to enlighten my son as to what's actually gone on because professionals have failed to do so, I've got all this information to give him. And it's that point that the mother is often in the room pretending to look after him, his safety because of me. But the reality of it is she doesn't want him knowing what she's been saying about the children and me and anyone else who's been involved in this in family court. And finally, I'm going to advise anyone, if you're being accused of allegations where you can blatantly prove that the person accusing you of this is totally lying out their backsides, do what I've done and attempt to get the police involved. After all, if you're being accused of violently attacking children, if you're being accused of that, then this is a criminal matter. Now, interestingly, whenever I raise this up in the past with family court, they've not wanted to know it. In fact, at some point, my ex's barrister at the time pretty much blackmailed me. If I didn't drop this criminal investigation, I would end up going to prison. And that's what the proposal was by my ex's barrister. So, like I say, if you go to family court, just be very mindful that if you're in my situation, you're very unlikely going to get anything at all. And I also advise you not to use solicitors. Solicitors are business, and business is money. They don't care about you, they don't care about the children. The only people really interested in family court solicitor wise is legal aid. Legal aid a few years back, probably 10 years ago now, they dropped certain criteria for people to apply for legal aid. And since family court and legal aid solicitors have been in big business because you get idiots just like my ex-partner who's using and abusing a system for their own gains. And of course, solicitors are going to be all over this. It means more money for them and it makes their career much stronger, saying that they've done this, they've done that. I hate to say it, and I'll say it again, there is absolutely no care whatsoever in the real world, or in the UK or England at least, for child safety and child protection. And if you are new to this, you might take what I say with a pinch of salt. On the other hand, people who has gone through this, even in America, New Zealand, Australia, this is a worldwide issue. And this is the reason that previous politicians in this country alone have tried shutting down family court and at least getting things reopened again. It's fresh new things to look at cases of child abuse with fresh eyes. It's all been dropped. Family court is known as a private court. The reason this is because they don't want the outside world knowing the type of corruption what's going in. The general public would deem it as utterly deprivation of child's rights. So that's about it. And I have gone on a bit because, like I said, I've covered this for the last 5 years. And I'll just let you know as well that to date, I'm still being accused of stuff. My fiance still being accused of stuff. My parents are still being accused of stuff. So let's just be mindful at the end of this video. If you've gone through something similar to what I've actually gone through, just remember you're not a deadbeat. The real deadbeat is the person who's poisoned children, who's abused, mentally abused children, poisoned and manipulated the system, which is a failure in the first place. And the other people who's actually taking it seriously is family members who's actually going to take sides with family anyways. And then we got innocent victims, younger people who doesn't understand the complexities of such serious things.